Hello, in this presentation we will enter bills and pay bills into our bookkeeping problem in Excel, keeping in mind how that same information might be done in accounting software such as QuickBooks. If you would like more information about the QuickBooks Pro, take a look at our comprehensive course in the link below. First, we're going to take a quick look at QuickBooks and then we'll jump over to Excel and enter the same data there. We're taking a look at the snapshot of QuickBooks, the vendor section, and we see the flow chart of the vendor section. That's going to be a very convenient thing within QuickBooks. It tells us the process of how to enter the data. Here we have the enter bills, and then we're going to pay the bills once they have been entered. When we enter the bills, it's going to be a convenient process actually, because we're going to be able to enter as many bills as we want. We can enter them at the point in time that we incurred the bill rather than waiting until we actually pay the bill to put them into the system as we should for the matching principle, because we should recognize the expense when they have been incurred. So we can put them all in the process here. Once we do that, the fact that it says bills in QuickBooks, this form then means that it's going to increase the accounts payable account, and the other side will go to wherever it goes, probably an expense like the phone bill, like the utility bill, and whatnot. Then we can go over here and choose which bills to pay, which we'll do both in this process, and then just pick the bills that we need to pay, and this will then write the check for us for those bills that we need to pay, which will reduce the checking account, reduce the cash, and record the decrease to the accounts payable. Here's what a bill is going to look like. We're going to pay the Verizon bill for, this is going to be our phone bill. We're going to have the date, that's just the end of the month type of bills that we're going to have here. We're just going to enter them into the bills and then print them out in using the pay bills function. We have the amount due, and then we have the expenses, not the item tab, but the expense tab, and we decide what expense it should be. We're going to put this to telephone expense. What will this do? By the nature of it being a bill, note it looks like a check, but this is going to be a bill slightly different. QuickBooks sees the bill as increased in accounts payable. That's what bills do. This will increase accounts payable, and the other side then will go to telephone expense, increasing the expense, decreasing net income. Then we're going to do another bill, and we're going to say this one is going to go to Spectrum for a bill. It's going to be an internet expense. We're adding that account here, and it's going to be the same process, meaning we're just going to enter the data. We're going to enter the amount of the bill. It's going to increase accounts payable, and it's going to increase the internet expense, reducing net income. And then if we did this one more time, we lost the last one, but we're doing it for Edison as well. So we enter the Edison bill. Then we would select the second piece of the process, which is to pay the bills. So once they have been entered, we can select pay bills within the vendor section of QuickBooks. Select those which we would like to pay. So we're just going to say we want these three and not that one. And then once we process this, QuickBooks can generate the checks or issue the check numbers, whichever we would like to do, and that would decrease the checking account. So this part, the pay bills, then will be decreasing the checking account. We are in essence issuing checks, and we'll be recording the other side to the expenses of telephone expense, the internet, and utilities. If we go back to QuickBooks, back to Excel, we're going to enter the same data over here. We're going to process these three checks, putting them first into the bills as if we're getting a bill. If we saw this in a book problem, it would be like we had an expense that we paid for on account, meaning we didn't pay cash for it. And then we'll go through the process of paying on account, meaning we're writing a check for the payable. So we're going to go down here. This is going to be at the end of the month. So we are down here in K20, and we're going to say 2/28 is the date. And then we're going to go back up top, and we're going to ask, is cash affected? First, we're going to say cash is not affected, because we're going to say that we paid these on account. Rather than paying with cash, we paid with accounts payable. So sometimes I like to think of what we received rather than think about accounts receivable first, or payable first, because it might be easier to know which way the account is going. So what did we get? We got the telephone. We paid the telephone bill, and that's going to be an expense. It's a type of expense down here, so we paid off a type of expense. So if we look for the telephone expense, it's down here. And the reason this might be easier is that we have all the expenses, and they all have debit balances, and they only go up in the debit direction, meaning we only pay the telephone company, we only pay the expenses, they don't pay us. and therefore we'll do the same thing to it that we always do it to its normal balance, that is to increase it with a debit. So we'll copy the telephone expense and scroll back up, be in cell L20, right click and paste 123. The amount then will be 365. And then we're going to credit something for that same 365. If we paid cash, it would be cash, but we have not yet paid cash yet. Therefore, instead of decreasing the asset of cash, we will be increasing the bad thing, the liability. So this is the accounts payable. We already know that we're going to credit it because we debited the telephone expense. If we double check it though, we know that it has a credit balance. We need to go up. The bad thing is increasing. We incurred more of it, and therefore we will do the same thing to it, which in this case is a credit. So we're going to copy accounts payable, put that on the bottom in L21, right click and paste 123. We have journalized the journal entry in the general journal, and now we'll post that to the general ledger. Before we do, we will freeze the panes going up top to AJ1, and then go into the View tab, go into the Windows group, freeze panes within the Windows group, and freezing the panes. Scrolling back down, we need this telephone expense. There's the telephone expense. We need to post that here, so ultimately it's going to go to the telephone expense here. It's the second to last account on the trial balance, and therefore the second to last account on the general ledger. So we're going to take a scroll to the right. It's going to be assets in green, then liabilities in orange, and then equity in light blue, and then the expense accounts. And we want to be way over here to the telephone expense. We are way over here in BS24. BS24. We're going to say that that equals that 365. That brings the balance up to 365. That should be found on the trial balance. Rather than scrolling all the way back, I'm just going to click right on the left-hand side of the frozen panes, and then click to the right, and it should just pop over there. Scroll back down, there's the 365. Now we will have the accounts payable. There's the accounts payable there that we need to post. Here it is on the trial balance, first orange account on the trial balance, and therefore first orange account on the general ledger. Scroll to the right to find that first orange account on the general ledger. We see it here in columns AY through BA, and we need to be here on the credit side because this is a credit. So we are on the credit side in cell AZ18. AZ18, we're going to select equals, point to the 365. That should increase our balance from 1,200 by 365 to 1,565. Scrolling back to the left to see if we see that same 1,565 on the trial balance. We see it here in AK13. We also have done something to accounts payable, and therefore we need to track this not just by date of when it happened, but who do we owe. So we're going to scroll all the way to the right, and we're going to find the subsidiary ledger. We're scrolling, taking a scroll to the right. We have to track the subsidiary ledger in a similar way that we have for the accounts receivable subsidiary ledger. We're going to have to add a couple here. So this is going to be first for Verizon. So I'm going to say Verizon is going to be our vendor. We will be on the credit side, so we are in DA16, and we're going to just say that that equals this 365 over here in 21, it looks like. So we're in DA16, and that's going to equal, pointing to this 365 credit, bringing the balance up in the credit direction to 365 for Verizon. Scrolling back up, if we see this is picking up all of the people that we owe money to, and that balance is 1,565, which hopefully matches what's on the trial balance. Let's check it out. To do so, we're going to put our cursor right on the left-hand side of those frozen panes, scroll to the right until it pops over, and there's the amount, accounts payable in AK13, 1,565. Same process, we're going to go through for another bill that we will enter for Spectrum. This is going to be for our internet provider. So we're going to say that we have the checking account here is not going to be affected because we're going to enter the bill on account, therefore dealing with accounts payable. but it might be easier for us to first think about what we are receiving, which was internet service. Internet expense is what we will be calling it. Down here we see the internet expense. Like all expenses, it's going to have a debit balance and it's going to go up in the debit direction. Therefore, we will do the same thing to it as we always do to expenses, debit it. Copying the internet expense by right-clicking and scrolling over to L23, right-click and paste 123. The date is going to be, once again, 2/28. The amount we're going to say is 480. 180. We're going to credit something for the same amount. If it was cash that we had paid, we would be crediting the cash, but we didn't pay cash. What we did instead was put the bill in. That means it's going to be accounts payable. Note, we already know that we're going to credit accounts payable because we debited the internet expense. But if we double check that, just to check it in our mind, we see that that's a credit. We need it to go up in the credit direction. So we're going to do the same thing to it, which is another credit. So I'm going to copy the accounts payable, right-clicking and copying. Put that on the bottom in L24, right-click and pasting. Then we'll increase the indent by going to the Home tab, the Alignment group, and increase indentation. Now we've journalized the journal entry in the General Journal, and we'll post it to the General Ledger, starting with internet expense. So that's going to be down here, right there. So it's going to be in the same order on the General Ledger. So we're going to have to scroll to the right again. So taking a scroll to the right, we're looking for those dark blue. There's the assets in green, the liabilities in orange, the equity in light blue. We're looking for the internet expense. Here we go. Scrolling down. We see this here in BO29. BO29, we want to pick up that item in M23. We will select equals and point to the item in M23 and enter. Brings the balance up to 180. We're going to jump back over and see if that same amount is on the trial balance by clicking to the left side of the frozen panes and then going right just a couple tabs, and there is the 180. We're out of balance by the 180 until we record the other side. Note that the expenses are bringing down net income, or in this case, putting us into a loss. This debit balance in net income means the expenses, debits, are greater than the credits, which are income, and therefore we have a loss at this time of 491. We're then going to record the other side. There's the other side to accounts payable. Here's the accounts payable on the trial balance, first orange account. It will then be the first orange account when we scroll over to the General Ledger. Scrolling over, first orange account, there it is. Scrolling down. We are in cell AZ19. AZ19, we're going to select equals, point to 180, bringing the balance up from 1,565 by 180 to 1,745. Scrolling back to the left, we should find that 1,745 on the trial balance right there, so it looks good. Are we back in balance? We are. The debits equal the credits. That looks good. We also need to record this same amount in the subsidiary ledger to the right. So we got it here, and we recorded it also in the general ledger by date. This is who we owe money to, the vendors we owe money to. We also need that information by vendor. So we're going to take a scroll all the way to the right. We're going to locate those subsidiary ledger, which is going to list the people we owe or the companies we owe or both, by vendor rather than just by date. We are way over here in, I just passed it a little bit, but that's okay. We're in here in AZ or CZ to DF. CZ to, those are the columns. CZ column to DF column. And we're going to post this same 180. We need a new vendor. So I'm down here on cell DD13, and we're going to say Spectrum. DD13 Spectrum. We are going to have a credit, so we're on DE16. I'm in DE16. We're going to pick up that 180. We will say equals, point to the 180, bringing the balance up to 180. That 180 then should be found on the trial balance. So we're going to click right on the left-hand side of the frozen panes. Then click, actually that 180 will not be on the trial balance. What will be on the trial balance is this $1,745. If I double click on that, that is all of the vendors. So sorry about that. We're going to say that $1,745, that should be on the trial balance. So we're going to click right up to the left of the frozen panes and then go right a little bit, and it should just pop over there back to the cell AK13. There's 1,745. We are back in business. We're going to do this one more time. This is going to be for the Edison bill, and then we'll pay the bill. So it's going to be great. So we're going to have the same date again. It's going to be 2/28, and we're going to pay the Edison bill, or we're going to enter the Edison bill, I should say. Is cash affected? No, because we're doing this on account, meaning it's going to be done in accounts payable. And then I would think about what we received. We're paying Edison. That's the utility bill. So we got electricity. We're going to put it into, we're going to call it utility. Note that we could call these whatever we want, whatever business we're in. We might group the telephone and utilities into just utilities expense, or we might break out utilities into more divisional expenses, might call it the electric expense. But it will be an expense of some kind typically. And that's what we'll be using here, utilities. And it has a debit balance, as does all expenses. It's going to go up, as do all expenses typically do. And then therefore, we're going to do the same thing to it, which is another debit. So we'll copy the utilities expense, put that on top in cell L26, right click and paste. 1, 2, 3. The amount will be for 648. We will also credit something for 648. Then we need to know what that credit will be to in terms of accounts. And it's not going to be cash because we're not yet paying cash. We are crediting instead the liability. Rather than the good thing, the asset going down, the bad thing, the liability is going up. This is a credit balance. We're going to increase it by doing the same thing to it, which is another credit, in other words. So we will copy the accounts payable. Scroll down to cell L24, right click and paste. 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to go to the Home tab. We're going to go to the Alignment group and increase the indentation. And we have now journalized the journal entry in the General Journal, and we'll go to the process this time of posting to the General Ledger. First, we'll post the utilities. That's typically way on the bottom, so it's way down here. It's going to be like the second. It is the second to last account. It's not like the second. It's totally the second to last account. We're going to go all the way to the right then to find it, because it's going to be in the same location on the General Ledger. So we will take a scroll to the right. I'm just holding down the right arrow to go right. And we've gone past there it is. We didn't go past it. It's right there in BS31. It's a debit over here. It's going to be a debit in the utilities in BS31. We will select equals 0.2. That's 648, bringing the balance up to 648. That same 648 should be found on the trial balance. To see that, we're going to go right to the left-hand side of the frozen panes and then go right, and that should pop us back over there. So I'm just going to click right, and there it is. There's the 648 in cell AK36. Now we're going to record the second piece, the accounts payable. That'll put us back in balance down here once we do that. It's going to be up here. It's going to be the first liability account. There it is. And therefore it will be the first liability account on the General Ledger where we need to post it. So we're going to go to the right and go past the green asset accounts and find that first liability account called accounts payable. There we have it. And we're going to go to the credit side of it, which in this case is in cell AZ20. We are in AZ20, the cell. And we're going to say that that equals the 648. So we're going to say that equals 648 and N24, bringing the balance up from 1,745 up by 648 to 2,393. That same amount should be found on the trial balance. Let's double check that and make sure that it is indeed the case. So there it is in AK13, 2,393. Now we've recorded this to the accounts payable here and the General Ledger giving the detail by date, but we also need the detail by person or company who owes us money, that called the vendors. So we're going to do that, we need to go to the subsidiary ledger all the way to the right. We're going to take a scroll to the right to the subsidiary ledgers. Subsidiary ledgers going to be in order by vendor, the people that we owe money to. And there's the subsidiary ledger for accounts receivable, the people that owe us money. And then here's the people we owe us to. We are in columns CZ through DF. And we're looking for, we need Edison. That's going to be a new one again. So we're going to put Edison down here. And we are going to be on the credit side. And we're just basically just posting once again the same thing that we did to the general ledger. So we're just going to say that we're on DA22, the cell, DA22. We're going to say that that equals this 648. So I'm going to say equals, point to the 648 in N27. That brings the balance up to 648 for Edison. And then if I was to add all of them up this time, instead of making the mistake I did last time, then it adds up to 2,393, which should also be found on the trial balance. Let's see if that is indeed the case. We will do that by going right. I'm going to click right to the left-hand side of the frozen panes. And then we're going to go to the right, and it should just pop back over there. And there it is in AK13. And same amount. Okay, so that we have now posted those three amounts and increased the accounts payable. We're going to go ahead and pay it off right away directly. And you might be thinking, what's the point of that? Why didn't we just pay it off at the beginning? One reason is it might give us an audit trail to go through the accounts payable. It might be easier within the software to put it into the bill and then pay it. The other reason is that in practice, we might not be doing this at the same time, meaning we might just be entering these bills as we get them and then deciding when we want to pay them. And it could be very useful for us to go through the accounts payable in order to do so. So now we're going to actually pay it. So meaning we're going to pay some of this information, picking the bills that we would like to pay. And we're going to do that with one journal entry here, even though it would be for multiple checks. So in other words, we're paying off Verizon, Spectrum, and Edison. In the journal entry format, we are decreasing the checking account and we are decreasing the accounts payable. So we're gonna basically write that in one journal entry rather than three separate journal entries, even though if you were to write the checks, you would write three separate checks. The things that would drive this in the accounting software would be the form of a check, which would drive the journal entry, which would be a decrease in the checking account and accounts payable. We'll note, however, that they are three different people that we are paying off when we record them in the subsidiary ledger. So we're going to go back to the subsidiary ledger and note the fact that we're paying off these three separate individuals. That's how we're tracking within our bookkeeping system who we are paying off. So what are we doing here then? We're going to say that we are making a payment on account. If it was a book problem, it would be something like we're making a payment on account. We're paying off the accounts payable. Is cash affected? We're going to say yes. We're writing checks. And so it's going to go down. How do we make something go down? We do the opposite thing to it, which in this case would be a credit. So I'm going to copy the checking account. We're going to scroll back down. We're going to make a new transaction as of 2/28. The checking account will go on the bottom in L30, right-clicking in L30, pasting 1, 2, 3. Then go into the Home tab, the alignment group, and increasing the indentation. The total that we're going to pay off here, and we could go to the subsidiary ledger and add these up, but we just saw that it's going to be the 365 Verizon, the Spectrum of 180, and the 648 for the Edison, adds up to of 1,193. So we're going to have a credit of 1,193, reducing the checking account. Then we will be debiting something. That debit will be for the same amount. We know that we will not be debiting the telephone expense, the internet expense, and the utility expense because we already did that up here. What we will be debiting is the accounts payable, reducing the accounts payable. We already know that we are going to be debiting the accounts payable because we credited cash. That's the beauty of thinking about cash first. So now we are going to think through it. However, this is a credit. We're going to do the opposite thing to it to make it go down because we're paying off the accounts payable, which in this case is a debit. So we'll copy the accounts payable. We'll scroll down, we'll put that in L29, right click and paste 1, 2, 3. We've now journalized the journal entry in the general journal, and now we'll post it to the general ledger, first starting with the top account, accounts payable. That's the first account on the trial balance, and therefore the first account on the general ledger where we need to post it. Scrolling to the right, we see the accounts payable. Scrolling down, we need to post it here in AZ21. So we are in cell AZ21. We're in cell AY21. It's going to be the debit side is the reason. We're on the debit side here. We're on the debit side here. AY21 equals, and we're going to point to that 1,193, bringing the balance down to 1,200. That same 1,200 should be found on the trial balance. Let's see if that is the case. Scrolling back to the trial balance, we see that amount there. Then we're going to pick up the checking account. That's going to be the first account, of course. It's going to be the checking account, first account up top on the trial balance, first account as well on the general ledger. We're going to be crediting it because we're reducing it. So we are in AN16 and 16, AN16. We're going to say that that equals, within AN16, we're going to say that that equals, then we're going to have to scroll down just a little bit and then point to that 1,193. Let's do that now. We are in AN16. We're saying equals. We're scrolling down just a bit. We're pointing to that 1,193 and enter. That brings the balance in the cash account to 103,353. That amount also found on the trial balance, 103,353. And we also need to, however, record this amount that we posted to the accounts payable to the amounts in the subsidiary ledger. And in this case, it's paying off three different things. We're paying off the Verizon, Spectrum, and Edison. So we're going to have to split this amount up into those respective pieces. As we do that, we should bring the subsidiary ledger to match what is on the trial balance, and we should be okay. That's how we are tracking that our books are right, that we've paid off who we should be paying off within the books in Excel. To do that, we're going to go to the subsidiary ledger all the way to the right. So we're going to take a scroll to the right by clicking the right arrow, scrolling to the right to find those subsidiary ledgers. There's our financial statement. There's the inventory. There's the subsidiary ledger for accounts receivable. Here it is for accounts payable. So we're in cells CZ through DF. And of these vendors, people we owe, companies we owe, we didn't pay Epiphone yet. We did, and Fender's already paid off. We're down here in Verizon. That's who we paid. So I can't just post this directly, meaning I can't just take this number and post it as we have in the past because we didn't post three different journal entries, which may have been nice to do to see more detail, but this takes less entries to do, and we'll still track the fact that we're paying off these vendors in the subsidiary ledger. So we're just going to have to put the 365 here that we're paying off, bringing the balance down to 0. We don't owe Verizon anything anymore. Spectrum, 180, bringing the balance down to 0. We don't owe Spectrum anything anymore. Edison, 648, bringing the balance down to 0. We don't owe Edison anything anymore. And we're going to check that that is correct now by double checking that this balance here matches what is on the trial balance over here. Let's do that now. It should be 1,200 on the trial balance. We're just going to click to the left-hand side of the frozen panes and then go right a couple times to see that that 1,200 is there. So it looks good. Everything looks good. What we will do now is unfreeze the panes. So we're going to go up top. We're going to go to the View tab, and we have the Windows group, and we have the freeze panes, and we will unfreeze the panes. And then we're going to go and check out what we've done to the financials and see if that pulls over correctly, see if we're still in balance, and see if everything is automated as it should be. We did something to the checking accounts. I'm just going to point to that on the financials. We did something to the accounts payable, so I'll point to that on the financials. We did something to a few expenses, including the telephone expense. I'll point to that. Utilities expense, we did something there. We will point to that. And the, internet expense. Hopefully I didn't put it into interest. I hope not. I apologize if I do. They look similar. And note here that we have a loss. That means that we're having the debits of expenses are greater than the credit of revenue. And we'll see that on the income statement too. So let's do that and let's look at that now. To see that, we're going to take a scroll to the right. We're scrolling to the right, scrolling to the right until we see the financial statements. Here they are. Here's the cash that's been adjusted. Here's the accounts payable been adjusted. And are we still in balance with the total assets still equaling liabilities and equity? It's all automated, been updated automatically as it would be in the accounting software. We can see here that on the income statement, we had the adjustments to these three expense accounts, the internet expense, the telephone, and utilities expenses. That brought the expenses up, which brought our net income down, or in other words, brought the loss. We have a loss here. Note that this represents the fact that we have a loss on the income statement, a plus and minus format. When we had the same brackets on the trial balance, it meant, when we don't have the brackets on the trial balance, it meant that we had that same loss because we're talking about debits and credits. I know that's a bit confusing, but no matter how you look at it, debits and credits and plus and minuses are something that we have to grapple with if we're going to learn the both of them, and getting them mixed up is part of the process. So mull that over, and then we can see that same loss here on the statement of owner's equity, and that is going into the end calculation for the ending owner's equity here of $143,036. That amount found on the balance sheet as well here, part of the end calculation to get the assets equaling the liabilities and equity. Once again, this is all automated in a similar way as it could be on the financials, but we need to know how it's put together so that we can troubleshoot problems with it.